Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series on current affairs. Now today's lecture would be focused on 1 week's current affairs related to the topic of geography and environment, related to the subject of geography and environment. As you all know, we are covering weekly current affairs, so every day we cover 1 week's current affairs with respect to one particular subject. That way you get to segregate your current affairs subject-wise. It would be easier for you to integrate your current affairs with your static portion also. So this is a better approach of covering current affairs, subject-wise. Now today we'll be focusing on 1 week's current affairs related to the field of geography and environment, right? So without further ado, without further delay, let's straight away dive into the lecture. And in the end, I have some important things to share, so do stay tuned. All right? Okay then, let's straight away dive into the lectures. Let's start. Let's begin. So current affairs, geography and environment, June part 3. As you all know, 1 month has 4 weeks. We have already covered the first 2 weeks of the month of June with respect to geography and environment. This is week number 3. And what are the topics that we are going to cover? Well, these are the topics that are going to be covered. Number 1, UNICEF's Children's Climate Risk Index 2026. Climate change is a reality, but it disproportionately affects children. There is a good reason behind it. Now, UNICEF is basically, it came out with an index assessing different countries, okay? So every country was given a score, and based on that score, UNICEF was able to ascertain that in which country children are more vulnerable to climate change and in which country children are less vulnerable to climate change. Surely, India is not that good a country with respect to vulnerability of children with respect to climate change. We'll talk about all these things in this topic. Okay, then topic number 2 is related to, well, location-based questions. 12,000 crore Kishau multi-purpose dam project in Uttarakhand. Okay, now, well, 6 states are going to benefit from this project. So what is this project? What is the purpose of this project? We'll talk about this and the location of this project. Then, land degradation and conservation, Bonn challenge milestones. So Bonn challenge was basically a challenge that every country took with respect to stopping desertification of land and afforestation, planting more and more trees, more and more forests. So India basically came out with a report that it has successfully fulfilled its Bonn challenges. So we'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about 13th BRICS Urbanization Forum. You all know that, well, 2026, India is the president of BRICS organization. It is the presidency is a rotating one, right? So for 2026, India is the host for BRICS summits. So in this, Urbanization Forum was conducted recently in New Delhi, and that led to New Delhi Declaration with respect to urbanization, sustainable urbanization. So we'll talk about this as well, right? So these are the 4 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is UNICEF's Children Climate Risk Index 2026. Climate change is a reality, okay? No matter how much we try to stop climate change, some things are still going to happen. Climate hazards, climate-related disasters, they are happening. Now, a particular research has found that children are more vulnerable to these climate-related disasters. There are a number of reasons for that. We'll talk about those reasons, why children are more vulnerable than adults. But, well, this is a fact that children are more vulnerable, okay? Now, UNICEF, which is an organization for child development and other things, well, UNICEF basically came out with a report. And in that report, it came out with an index. That index gives each country a score out of 10. Higher the score, higher are the chances that children in your country are more vulnerable to climate change. And India scores pretty high, okay? So in this topic, we'll talk about this index, okay? What is this index, which UNICEF has recently released, okay? Why are children more vulnerable to climate change? And what is India's position? Why does India face or score so badly, okay, when it comes to this index? So let's talk about this entire report. So let's begin. So UNICEF's Children's Climate Risk Index 2026. So in June 2026, United Nations Children's Fund launched its updated Children's Climate Risk Report. Okay, in that report, they come out with an index. Index is basically a score given to each country. Okay, higher your score, more are your children vulnerable to climate change. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, about this score. So what is this score all about? So the report evaluates risks through an intersectional index that combines physical data with systemic societal readiness. So this index gives you score based on 2 things. Pillar 1 is climate-related shocks and threats. It measures direct environmental exposure across 8 primary climate hazards. What are those climate hazards? Coastal floods, droughts, heat waves, fires, riverine floods, sand, dust, storms, tropical storms. So these are the 8 climate-related hazards, and you check the vulnerability of children with respect to these 8 climate-related hazards. Alongside these, 2 other hazards or 2 other problems are also looked at. One is air pollution and vector-borne disease. Because whenever there is flooding and all, okay, those areas are more vulnerable to waterborne diseases, okay, airborne diseases like malaria, cholera and all. So your sensitivity or children's vulnerability to these diseases also, this is also looked at in this index. Then pillar 2 is, well, it evaluates the state's capacity to protect child rights based on baseline access to healthcare, education, clean water and all. So one measures a child's vulnerability, the other measures the capacity of the state to take care of children. Okay, healthcare facilities, clean water, sanitation and all. Here, based on these 2 pillars, well, an index score is given. Okay, now we'll come to India. What has been India's performance, or what was India's performance? We'll come to that. But let's talk about the overall picture as presented by UNICEF with respect to the entire world. Okay, so macro global findings. Globally, nearly half of the world's children, 1.1 billion, are currently exposed to at least 3 climate hazards. There are 8 climate hazards, 1.1 billion children, half of the entire world's children. Well, they are exposed to at least 3 climate-related hazards. Not a good thing. Meanwhile, 4 million children globally inhabit zones where they face up to 6 climate-related hazards. 4 million children are in those areas where they are vulnerable to 6 climate-related hazards. Okay, the most prevalent trio means the 3 most dangerous climate-related hazards for all children. Well, it is drought, extreme heat, and heat waves. These are the 3 most devastating, most dangerous. In fact, 296 million children are vulnerable to these 3, the dangerous trio. Let's call it the big 3 or the dangerous trio. Okay. Now let's talk about India. So India is not doing very well. Remember, I told you they give you a score out of 10. And the higher your score, well, the worse is the situation for children in your country. I mean, your children, or not your children, your country's children are more vulnerable to climate change if your country scores higher in this index. Now, India's score was 9.21, making it one of the most hazardous environments globally. And even in South Asia, only Pakistan and Bangladesh have worse scores, higher scores. So there are South Asian countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka who are doing better than us. Okay. Now, these are the 3 biggest challenges for children. Massive exposure to extreme heat, 10 out of 10. Air pollution crisis, 9.94, very bad score, high score. Severe drought vulnerability. So for India, these are the 3 most dangerous things for children. For India, the dangerous trio is this. Clear? Now, why do children face a disproportionate burden of climate change? I mean, why are children more vulnerable than adults? Okay. First of all, physiological limitation. Because children have smaller bodies. So they have higher surface area to body mass ratio. And if you have a higher surface area, you lose or you gain heat very quickly. You lose heat also very quickly in colder areas. You gain heat also very quickly in hot areas. Therefore, it is difficult for children to regulate their body temperature. So they are more vulnerable to extreme weather events because their capacity to regulate their own internal temperature is a little less than adults. So this is why. So this is the medical reason. Then number 2, immune networks. Immature immune systems and respiratory pathways make children significantly more vulnerable to airborne toxins. Children are more vulnerable to these airborne diseases. They are more vulnerable to these air pollutants because their respiratory systems are still underdeveloped. Their immune systems are still underdeveloped. Okay. Then vicious displacement cycle. Now this is more humanitarian. This is not medical. When climate shocks destroy rural infrastructure, families lose their homes and livelihoods. This instability leads to migration, forcing children out of school systems. subjecting them to unsafe shelters, exposing them to malnutrition and child labor also. If the family is suffering economically, you don't have food to eat in your home, well, the parents are also willing to let their child do all the labor, okay, earn some money. So this forces them to abandon their education. The children abandon their education and they go for child labor. This happens, forced migration. So that is why they are more vulnerable. Now, why do you think India is not doing that great? Well, when it comes to heat waves, well, we have a policy action called Heat Wave Action Plan, HAPs. So whenever any area suffers from heat wave like situation, these HAPs are triggered by the government. Now, these HAPs are flawed. They don't take into account the extreme vulnerability or the extra vulnerability that children are suffering from. So, what are the flaws in heat wave action plans? Anganwadi and school neglect. Most standard heat action plans do not include clear rules for closing schools or modifying hours during temperature spikes. They lack budgets to install cooling infrastructure in rural Anganwadi centers. So, these are daycare centers for children in rural areas. They do not have cooling infrastructure. So, children suffer in these areas. Then, generally, these heat wave action plans their focus is mostly helping people during daytime, because it is during daytime that heat wave conditions generally occur. During nighttime, everyone expects the temperatures to come down. But these days in India, even nighttime temperatures are pretty high. And our heat wave action plans are not catering to these nighttime heat problem. So this is there. And then absence of age-specific mapping. The data that the government agencies collect with respect to vulnerability of children, that is not proper. Okay, so this is a data issue. This is, school-related issue, and this is nighttime-related issue. Here, make sense? All right, that's about it. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is 12,000 crore Kishau Dam project. Now look, there is a tributary of Yamuna River coming from Uttarakhand. Okay, that tributary is Tong River. Now that tributary is a perennial tributary. Basically, it supplies water to Yamuna River all year long. Okay, because it is fed by glaciers in Uttarakhand. Now the thing is, recently the government has decided to build a mega hydroelectric power project on that river, which is a tributary to Yamuna River. Now, for that hydroelectric project, well, 6 states have signed an agreement, because the beneficiaries of that hydroelectric power project would be those 6 states: Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, UP, Delhi NCR, Haryana, right? So these are the states that are going to benefit from this. Now, what is important for us in this particular topic? Okay, why have I included this topic in today's lecture? Well, that is because location-based MCQs are asked in your prelims examination. That is why. So the location of this river, location of this project is very important. And in the end, for mains, we'll talk about what are the benefits of this project and what are the challenges. So let's quickly begin, okay? So 12,000 crore Kishau Dam project. So following decades of political deadlock and regulatory delays, a landmark joint agreement was signed by 6 basin states to fast-track 12,000 crore Kishau multi-purpose dam project. Recognized, and now this project is important because it is recognized as project of national importance by union government. Okay, and it is being constructed in Upper Yamuna Basin. Now, let's take a look at the location. Now, this is Yamuna River. Okay, this is Uttarakhand. This is Yamuna River. Okay, Yamuna River. Now, from its right side, there is Tons River. So basically, you can say that Tons River is a right bank tributary of Yamuna River. Okay. Now, there are many projects that are being constructed in this area. Renuka project, Lakhwar Vyasi project. Okay. There is Kishau project. Now, the location of this project is such that it lies at the border of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. And by the way, if we talk about Tons River, okay, before Tons River meets Yamuna River, it has more water than the Yamuna River before it gets its waters from Tons River. Tons River has more water flow. Clear? Now, let's talk a bit more about this project. So, geomorphic layout. The dam is designed to span the Tons River, which is largest and most voluminous perennial. Perennial means throughout the year, tributary of Yamuna River. Tons source is fed by Himalayan snowpacks of Bandar Poonch Massif. Bandarpunch Glacier. It is a glacier that feeds Yamuna River as well as Tons River. Okay, carrying more water than Yamuna mainstream before their confluence below Kalsi. The physical axis of the dam sits directly on the mountainous interstate border dividing Dehradun district of Uttarakhand and Sirmaur district of Himachal Pradesh. Because it is classified as national project or project of national importance, the financial layout follows a center-heavy funding. I mean, most of the funding is being done by central government and some amount is being pitched in by state governments as well. Okay, so remember this fact. Now, why is this project being constructed? What are the benefits of this project? So let's quickly talk about this. The execution of Kishau project acts as a strategic shield across three primary economic vectors. First of all, it will generate clean energy. Okay, it will generate electricity, and that electricity does not emit any greenhouse gases. So good for India's net zero emission aim. Plus, it will generate around 660 megawatts of hydropower, which can be supplied to the northern electricity grid. Okay, then it will also provide urban drinking water. Many cities in this area face water crisis, especially for big urban cities like Delhi and all. There is shortage of drinkable water. So this will resolve this. Plus, it's not just for power. This hydroelectric project won't just supply you power, won't just supply you water for drinking. It will also provide water for irrigation. So it will help farming communities in this area. And this area is, well, dominated by farmlands. So this is there. But every big project is or has certain challenges. Big hydroelectric power projects do have these challenges. I mean, the challenges that we are going to look at just after a few seconds, well, they are common to all hydroelectric power projects. You can use these challenges in all hydroelectric power projects. Okay, what are these challenges? Socio-ecological submergence tension. When a dam is constructed, nearby land gets permanently submerged underwater. Now, that nearby land was agricultural land. You'll definitely pay some compensation to farmers whose land is being submerged because of the construction of this dam. But yet, many farmers object to this. So this is a problem. Then this particular dam lies in seismically active zone 4 or 5. The entire country is divided into these seismic zones based on their vulnerability to earthquakes. This Himalayan region is vulnerable to severe earthquakes, zone 4 or 5. So if there is a severe earthquake, well, this Himalayan or this particular dam can suffer, or there is going to be definite damage. Okay. Then downstream interstate dispute vector. Well, how much water should be shared from this dam between different states? All of this is a problem. So this will be done. I mean, this is a challenge basically. Okay. How much water? This can lead to river water disputes. So let's see what happens in future, but that's about it. Right? Okay. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is land degradation and conservation Bonn challenge milestones. Now you see, Bonn challenge was a challenge that was launched in 2015 basically, and different countries gave voluntary commitments. What were these commitments related to? Well, these commitments were related to solving the problem of deforestation, solving the problem of desertification of land, land degradation. Now, recently, Ministry of Environment has released a report saying that as per our commitments under Bonn Challenge, we have planted so many trees and we have reclaimed somehow around 25 million hectares of land. Okay. And we have put that land under forest. Basically, the Ministry of Environment was patting itself on its back, saying that we have fulfilled all our targets with respect to our Bonn Challenge, right? So first in this topic, we'll talk about what is this Bonn Challenge and what have been India's achievements. And what policies did India come up with that helped it to achieve this challenge? Clear? So let's quickly talk about this. So land degradation, conservation, Bonn challenge milestones. So on the occasion of World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought, which is June 17th, Ministry of Environment released India's updated national matrix, Ecosystem Restoration. Ministry of Environment announced that India successfully restored 21.76 million hectares of degraded and deforested land under its voluntary global commitments. Clear? Now, this is really good for India's commitments under UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, plus it is good for India's achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. But first, let's talk about the Bonn Challenge. So, It was not launched in 2015, sorry, 2011. 2015 is the time when India joined it. So launched in 2011 by government of Germany, because Bonn is a city in Germany, and the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN. It established a global aspiration to restore 150 million hectares of the world's deforested and degraded lands by 2020. Okay. This was later extended by New York Declaration on Forests to 350 million. So earlier it was 150 million by 2020. Then the target was made more aggressive to achieve 350 million by 2030. Now in 2015, India joined it. Okay. And India said it is going to restore 21 million hectares of land by 2020. Later, India also became a little more aggressive with its target, saying that we are going to restore 26 million hectares of land by 2030. All right. Now, how was India able to achieve its first target? So let's talk about this. Structural mechanics of India. India's milestone of restoring 21.7 million hectares between 11 to 26 was achieved by linking several domestic schemes into unified network. Now, three schemes are very important. Number one, CAMPA. What is CAMPA? Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority. So what does this authority do? Whenever you are launching a project, commercial project, let's suppose you want to build an airport or a steel plant, and that project requires deforestation in a particular area. So there is one particular forest area, you need to cut it down to construct your project. You can do it, provided you give some funds to the government. Okay, so you can divert some forest land by giving some funds to the government, to this authority, and this authority will make sure that these funds are utilized for afforestation in some other area. Okay, so if you want to create a project in one particular forest, you clear the forest, but that similar land area, or the government will plant a new forest in a different location using this fund. So this is CAMPA. Then MG Narega. Manrega, you all know what is it. Okay, now the name of the scheme has been changed. But well, under Manrega, approximately 60% of the total Manrega expenditure has been steered towards green jobs, environmental restoration jobs. Then we have also launched Green India Mission, one of the 8 missions under National Action Plan on Climate Change. Clear? Now, there are some other structural mechanics also. How does India measure its progress? Okay, so key measurement and tracking frameworks. Number one, well, there is a portal launched by ISRO, Bhuvan portal, which collects all the satellite imagery and generates maps with respect to India's performance with respect to afforestation. So this is there. Then there is One Agni portal, Green India dashboard, which tracks all the afforestation drives. Okay, One Agni basically tracks forest fires. So these are the portals that track the progress made by India under Bonn challenge. Okay, but still we have some challenges. Still, all these good policies have certain challenges. What are those challenges? Number one, monoculture trap. You see, a forest generally has a diverse variety of trees. Okay, so when we cut down a particular forest under CAMPA, okay, we cut that diverse forest and we plant another forest, but in that forest we only grow one particular or two particular categories of trees. So diversity is sacrificed in favor of monoculture. This is really bad for ecological health. Okay, this is a problem. Then invasive species. Sometimes we use foreign species which can destroy a particular ecology. And then sometimes cutting down all these trees or planting another set of trees in a different area can lead to conflict with certain forest dwelling scheduled tribes. Their rights under Forest Rights Act, they get challenged and there is a perpetual conflict. The matter goes to court and things stay over there. So these are some of the implementation gaps that if India takes care of, well, things would be great. Now in your notes, there is a way forward also given. So do check that out. And let's quickly move our focus to last news item of the day, and that is 13th BRICS Urbanization Forum. Now let's quickly cover this topic. Okay, you all know that BRICS presidency currently is with India for 2026, and under BRICS, well, there are a host of summits that India is organizing. Yesterday we talked about Agricultural Minister Summit. Today we are going to talk about Urbanization Summit. Okay, how can we go forward with sustainable urbanization so that all the challenges faced by urban areas in all the BRICS countries Well, they can be solved by mutual cooperation, right? So let's quickly talk about this. So 13th BRICS Urbanization Forum. So hosted under India's BRICS chairship at Sushma Swaraj Bhavan in New Delhi, the 13th BRICS Urbanization Forum brought together ministers, urban planners and geometricians who are responsible for architecture of urban areas from across the expanded bloc, from across all BRICS countries, okay? The forum eventually led to New Delhi Ministerial Declaration, New Delhi Declaration. The theme of this summit was Cities for People, BRICS Cooperation for Inclusive and Resilient Futures, Urban Futures, okay? Now, this New Delhi Declaration basically has 4 pillars. Under this New Delhi Declaration, these different countries would cooperate in these 4 areas. Okay, what are these 4 areas? Number 1, with respect to the problem of urban heat island. You all are familiar with this concept, urban heat island. So countries are going to cooperate in this area. Then circular economy, recycle, reuse. Okay, circular economy means that very little waste is generated. Waste management is a big problem that many of the urban centers of the world are facing right now. So this is there. Plus there is another problem called urban flooding. And urban flooding is really problematic, and the reason behind urban flooding is that earlier when there was no city, the ground was well covered with soil. Soil is a little permeable to rainwater. So whenever there is rainfall or flooding, this water percolates downwards. But now, instead of soil, we have concrete floors in these urban areas. The water isn't able to percolate and it flows on the surface, causing floods. Okay, so we need to create natural sponge mechanisms. Well, we need to encourage wetlands in these urban areas. We need to use special organic material for tiling and all, which allows water to percolate downwards. Okay, sponge concrete. So these mechanisms should be used. And in the end, for all these 3 things, all BRICS countries need to do research and development. They also need to cooperate. So for that, for mutual cooperation in research and development to solve these 3 challenges, well, BRICS countries have created a network of research institutions. Okay, this is known as Birkin Network. So what is Birkin Network? BRICS Urban Research and Knowledge Network. It is a dedicated technical body which will give solutions for urban management. It serves as an open access repository for spatial data, climate resilient architecture designs and sustainable transit templates. How to design your roads so that there are no traffic jams basically across the global south. And all countries of the global south can access this research data. Now, it is a network of research institutions across all BRICS countries. Which is the research institution that will be part of this network from India? It is going to be National Institute of Urban Affairs in New Delhi. Okay. Now, this table is shared in your notes. It basically talks about the challenges in urban areas and the solutions provided by New Delhi Declaration. So the last column is related to solutions provided by New Delhi Declaration, and the first column is about challenges. The second column is basically about what was the traditional approach. And we are not following traditional approach anymore. We are looking for modern solutions and nature-based solutions, natural solutions. Like to solve the problem of urban flooding, we are looking at wetlands, the natural lakes in a particular area. Okay, so yeah, this is there. Now, what is the significance of this forum for India? Well, very simple. India will become the voice of global south. Okay, this is a familiar significance for India. And second, well, it will help inform Indian policies on sustainable urban management. So India already has certain policies like Amrut Mission, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, and Smart Cities Mission, right? So through this Birkin framework, our Amrut Mission and Smart Cities Mission can also learn a lot and, well, use those learnings for better implementation of these schemes. Make sense? So this is the significance for India. And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if, number 1, you're consistent and regular with this lecture series. And number 2, you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. That is really important. Okay? Just watching this lecture would be job half done. Because you will definitely forget these current affairs after a couple of days. If you really want to retain these current affairs in your memory, at least till your exams, Well, you have to solidify them by revising them from the notes. Now, these notes are provided on our Telegram channel, and the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below this video. Now, yes, due to temporary suspension of Telegram channel for the NEET exam by the government, well, for a few days, you might not be able to access our Telegram channel, but don't worry. After this ban on Telegram for the NEET exams, I'll upload all these notes on our Telegram channel. So just subscribe to our Telegram channel. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. On that note, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another lecture in this lecture series of current affairs. Thank you, everyone.